You are good at your job. You care about the people who come to you. You care about serving your clients well, and you seek out trainings. Maybe you're at the very beginning of your work and you just know this is the field for you, and you are really excited about gaining all the skills you need to do work that is going to support your clients in transformation. Or maybe you're like me, where you've trained in a bunch of different models. You've been seeking out experts and learning from the best in the field. And you know what? The skills you've been gaining are working. And a lot of your clients are getting better, but not all of them. And sometimes it feels like something's missing. And if you're like me, you start searching, well, maybe I haven't found the right therapy. Maybe it could be better. I don't know what I'm missing. Maybe I don't have to feel so tired or burnt out at the end of the day. I used to be tired at the end of all my days. I was working so hard to make sure I did therapy incredibly well. And I was exhausted. And I realized that maybe it's not a problem with the tools I've got in my toolkit or all the skills maybe I need to pivot how I'm doing therapy. The bad news is that doing therapy well is not actually about following a protocol perfectly. The great news is that doing therapy well is not about following a protocol perfectly. That's not where to put our focus. I want to help you put your focus in a different spot, and neurobiology can tell us how. I want you to be able to mix science with art, science with creativity. I want you to let go of needing to follow protocols perfectly, but also never be lost about where you are in the room or where you're going. And I have a way to do that. I'm Jules. Julianne Taylor Shore is my full name, but nobody calls me that. Everybody calls me Jules. And I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and a licensed professional counselor. And for many years, I've been training in interpersonal neurobiology and all things neuroscience and teaching clinicians all over the world how to incorporate the amazing findings that neurobiology has given us into their clinical work. I've kind of always been like this, wondering about how stuff works. When I was young, I fell in love with poetry. I was reading Emily Dickinson. I read this poem and it was like magic, goosebumps, amazing. And I went, how in the heck did that work? And so I found this weird program where you could start summer in college during high school, and I started studying poetry. And then I went and saw The Glass Menagerie by Tennessee Williams, and it moved me, and my heart was like, what? And so I went to school for theater, and I became a theater director, and I directed plays. Why? Because I wanted to know how stuff works. And when I had a really hard period in my life, thank God I could turn back to fixing cars for a living, which I do know how to do. Because I know how stuff works. I've always been really, really interested in that. So I started therapy school, like you, and I noticed there were no classes on the brain, and I didn't know how to help people hold their minds and hearts well if I didn't know how a brain works. And since I've always kind of been interested in how stuff works, I went and took a bunch of neurobiology classes and neuroscience classes and went to Vanderbilt in their medical school program. That was my first road in to take the med school version of neuroscience. I've been studying it ever since. And like a lot of you, I have also, at the same time, been training in a lot of different therapies. And I think I've been doing it because I knew in my bones experiential therapy works. So of course I'm training in somatic experiencing and sensory motor psychotherapy and PACT and RLT and IFS. I actually think they're all amazing. I don't have a favorite. I'm agnostic. And I don't think that means we can't make our therapy better or our days in with joy. I actually know you can. I used to be tired. I used to be burnt out. Every day I leave my office and I have more energy than when I walked in. And why is that happening? Is because I said, wait a second, stop worrying about grabbing the right tool and using it just right, and start worrying about what neuroscience can tell us that make our skills work better. Because the truth is, you are not an auto mechanic trying to fix a car. You're much more like a gardener trying to help a tree grow, and you don't need wrenches for that. You need a certain kind of skill that can help you move away from the fixing and helping energy and into the serving energy. I have a quote that I love by Rachel Naomi Remen. It goes like this: helping, fixing, and serving represent three different ways of seeing the world. When you help, you see the world as weak. When you fix, you see the world as broken. When you serve, you see the world as whole. Helping and fixing may be the work of the ego, and service, the work of the soul. I don't think you need more tools. I think that you need to use the skills you have differently so that you can create spaces that serve both your client's brain and their heart at the same time. And the way to do that is to talk to the part of the brain that is going to create change for the person with whom you are working. The truth is that change down in this part of the brain makes a world of difference in our mental health. And experiential therapies, there are tons of them out there. These are therapies that focus on the here and now. They focus on embodied practices. They focus on being in relationship with what your mind is doing right now. Those therapies work to support transformation in your subcortical brain. And I knew that in my bones years ago. That's why I'm trained in so many of them. Luckily, some of the research has caught up with us, and we are finding in the last 10 years or so that these experiential models that are out there, all of them work really, really well. And the reason they do is because they are targeting the part of the brain that matters when it comes to changing things. When we're trained in all these different ways of thinking and we honor what's actually happening in the room, which is that, oh, I've got all this data about how to work with my people, and I'm a complex system and they're a complex system and we're a complex system between the two of us. So much is going on that if you're going to hold a focus in the room, it's got to be on something simple. So here I am, trained in all these things and getting burned out at the end of the day and watching some of my clients get better, but not all of them. And then I would try a new tool, and that, I wasn't creating a space where I could really serve them. I wasn't creating a space where they could find their own transformation. And as I was diving deep into the neurobiology of all this, I thought to myself, one of the problems is I need to really think about where I'm going. What is mental health? When I'm trying to help a client, not what does my culture say what mental health is, but what does mental health from a neuroscience lens say? And I think we actually know that. I think what mental health is that we spend more time in integrated states and that we can flex through different levels of integration really easily. And the more you can do those two things, the more you can have that where you can hang out in higher integrated states, the more flexible your brain is, the more mental health you're going to have. Now, what is it that these integrated states do? An integrated state supports connection and bonding and nuanced thinking and intuition and insight and moral reasoning and body balance and emotional regulation. You want any of those things, and I know that your clients do. What they need is ability to access with ease deeper integration in their brains. That's not the thing I actually want to teach clinicians to focus on. What I need to teach clinicians to focus on is the one point, that one point that makes the brain go integrated more or less. And here's the thing. Here's the one subconscious perception that drives the whole thing. And that is your perception of, I handle this. Your perception of, am I okay enough? And so we've got all these complexity, all these tools, and I want to help you put them all together and just focus on this one thing, your client's perception of okayness, so that you can create opportunities wherein they can shift that in the lower part of their brain. The other thing I really care about is, how does a brain change? Is it possible to change what the lower part of my brain perceives is okay and not okay? And it turns out it is. It is totally possible to change that. And a brain changes when we focus on a thing we want to change and hold enough activation and enough regulation at the same time. I want to tell you a story about a client so that we can start moving these kind of heady concepts into the therapy room. Gabrielle came to me and she had a good life. She was really pretty thrilled with her life. She had a wonderful marriage. She had 2 kids. She had a great job. She felt creative in her job. And she came to me because she was struggling and she couldn't even figure out why. She was terrified all the time. She felt deeply not okay, right? So, and this was starting to spill over into being short with her kids and short with her husband and not as creative in her job as she wanted to be. And she was struggling. And when we tracked, when did this fear start? We found, it actually started right after her first kiddo was born. So now her kiddo's 6. So for the last 6 years, Gabrielle has been bouncing around therapists and ends up in my office going, I don't know, nobody can seem to help me. There's nothing wrong in my life. I'm just scared all the time. So I know Gabrielle is having a struggle with her mental health. She's not staying integrated, and the different levels of integration are not able to flex between each other. But how am I going to help her? Well, I need to create opportunities for her to shift her subconscious perception of her okayness, because clearly her perception of okayness is very narrow. Otherwise, she wouldn't be scared all the time. So we start to focus, and I love experiential therapy. I love to slow down and be with the body and the feelings, because rather than using our figure it out brains to discern what's wrong, we can listen deeply and find where we actually want to focus the work, because this part of your brain knows what's wrong, and this part of your brain often does not. And so we needed to create a space where we could keep our focus. And we found out, for this person, this sweet lady, there were some big things that happened when she was really young. Right after she was born, about 4 weeks after she was born, she had an older sister who was only 2 die, and her whole family went into disarray. And she was only 4 weeks old, but her subconscious mind was holding terror. And once we understood that, we could hold the focus in the room of, what happened in your family system? What happened as your family system fell apart? What happened as you came into this world and were greeted in huge grief in your family? And we held that and held that and held that. And we were able to stay experiential. Why do I care about staying experiential? Because I care about changing the brain down here, not the brain up here. So we stayed with embodied work, and we stayed in helping her focus on her feelings and in relationship with herself. And as we were doing that, we were really noticing, don't forget, a brain changes when enough activation and regulation is simultaneously present. So I had to start using some of these beautiful skills I'd learned in all these different therapy trainings to put them together and help her both regulate and feel the thing that was true inside her body. At the same time, we had to have that activation and that regulation present simultaneously. And she got better, and she stopped being afraid. And once we faced what that subconscious brain was holding, her life settled and she was all right. And I felt great. And I noticed this was happening in lots of clients. As I started to think about how to hold a single focus in the room, I noticed, things are really changing for my work. And I started feeling more effective, and more of my clients were getting better, and I was getting more creative in the room. And I'm leaving every day going, this is awesome. I have like the best job in the world. How lucky is it that I get to go home every day and have more energy to give to my kid than I did in the morning when I walked into the office? And I was also wondering, is it me? Am I getting lucky? What is going on here? And I talked to some friends, some colleagues who I'd been dabbling and talking about some of these ideas with. And we were talking about, what if you tried it out? What if you tried teaching us? And the thing is I love clinicians, the therapists, healers, coaches. You are my people. I want to find a way to serve you, but I don't want to do it if I'm not confident that what I'm doing is actually an act of service. So I gathered all of these people from all over the world. I have friends all over who are clinicians, and these 30 sweet humans descended on my house for the last several months so I could try it out. And we put it all together, and I told them what I think about how to organize this whole space and how to support yourself to feel really different in the room while you're doing therapy. And it turns out they all are sharing stories of feeling like their work is really changing. One of them told me, Jules, it's like I've trained in all these models, so I thought I had an SE puzzle and an IFS puzzle and a narrative therapy puzzle and a PIT puzzle, and I had scattered them all over the space, and I would figure out which one was right to use with this client or that problem. And what you did was you brought all of them together. And what I discovered is I don't even have 20 puzzles. I have one puzzle that actually fits really well for all the people I'm working with. And my work is getting easier and I'm doing better work. So my clients are getting better faster. This is incredible. You need to share this with people. This other clinician who I just chatted with yesterday, who's been part of this group of 30. And this is a clinician who is a by the rules clinician. She wants to make sure she gets it right. She's very interested in making sure she's following protocols really tightly and wants to do therapy like the right way. And she told me this story about a client who had come in who was really, really embarrassed about this thing that was happening where in her couple, when she and her husband would fight, she would end up falling down on the floor in a fetal position. And this sweet clinician got onto the floor in front of her client and did that thing and looked up and said, like this? And the client was saying, yes. And the shame was lifting and falling away. And oh my gosh, undoing aloneness was so profound in that moment. And this clinician told me the story so that I could know that the training that we've been doing was helping her feel more creative than she's ever felt and able to greet her people in a heart-led way while she didn't lose any of her clinical mind. I want to help you mix your science and your art, find your joy in your room, find your creativity again. And in order to do that, we need to rethink how we're pulling all these models together, how we're actually doing therapy. I want us to even rethink what exactly the job is, because I do not think we are here to help or fix anyone. I think we are here to serve them. And I want you to be able to serve your people so that you move from burnout to joy, so that you move from those moments of doubt and stuckness to freedom and creativity. If what I'm saying resonates for you, if you want to move from burnout to joy, if you want to greet those moments of doubt and stuckness in the therapy room with creativity and freedom, I really hope you'll join me on this journey. And I'm not going to lie, it is a complex one. It is way deep based in neuroscience. And this stuff, I'm trying to help us rethink how we do this work. So it's not easy, but it is complex and deep and fun. And there is just as much neuroscience as there are opportunities to chat with me directly, and just as much new skills, honing skills, and paying attention to your own experiential practice and applying all of this with deliberate practice work so that it doesn't just become an idea, but actually an embodied practice you can use in your room. We've really been taking a deep dive into how we teach therapists well. And I'm using all of that research to design a course so that you can use it to transform your practice, to transform how you think about this work, so that all those skills you've been using all these years come together in a single, creative, fluid, complex form that serves the folks you care about most.